Part two of this presentation on why do you go to school is called credentials. So how do you get a job that will not wear your body out? Proven knowledge is the best kind of knowledge. Successful people have credentials. Credentials come from someone else. So step one is stop being a child and become an adult. Step two is to own your life's decisions. All of them. I believe that no one can be successful without knowing the goals of what they are going to do. Your future is affected more by your daily choices than any other controllable factor. Do you know what you get from school? You get building blocks. Building blocks are like math, for example, the times table. English is like spelling. Writing would be grammar. And science would be computers. These are the building blocks that you get from school, and others too. What you learn in school are the building blocks for credentials. Your first credential is likely a high school diploma. What does any credential say about you? That you completed the required work, that you learned things, that you cooperated, that you showed up, that you passed a test, and that you own your future. What else does it say? You can set goals, overcome obstacles, have self-control, can be counted on, and can do it again. Things that make it harder to get credentials are jail, a baby, and drugs. And when we talk about drugs, I want to just mention a sidebar here. Your brain is not a toy. Whenever you take drugs and that changes how you feel, you're actually just changing your brain you think you're feeling different, but it could actually damage your brain, and you shouldn't just play with your brain as a toy. Things that make it easier to get a credential: doing the work, like-minded friends, a support system, and learning things. Places to get credentials or earn credentials is a 4-year or community college, a trade school, specialty school, online on the internet, in the military, and on-the-job training. And credentials take time and hard work to achieve. Life isn't always easy, and a credential is a process which makes you work hard to achieve the results. So you must stop being a child and become an adult. Never quit until you have the credential. I was talking to some people who work at White Point College, some professors, and they agree with this statement. Is that many young people, they start working in a classroom or on a credential, and if something happens, it's too hard, they don't want to, they find they don't like it, whatever their reason is, they quit. So they wasted some time, wasted some money, and got nothing. You need to stick it out, because anything that you do to get the credential may be helpful for you the rest of your life. I want to tell you also about Jessica. Now, Jessica, when I met her, she'd quit school and had a baby, and she's now in her 20s, and she wanted to get her life better. So she started a job at auto parts store. And she was doing really well, I thought, as I used to meet with her once a month or so. But oftentimes she would say to me, "I'm quitting." I would say, "Why?" "Oh, the boss is too mean. He doesn't appreciate me. The other employees are lazy. I'm tired of doing all the work myself." I said, "Jessica, you cannot quit until you get a credential. Well, she hung in there, thankfully, and about at a year and a half, something like that time frame, she was promoted to assistant store manager. And I said to Jessica, now you can quit because you have a credential. Well, she didn't quit then, and she eventually made store manager. The more credentials you have, the more control you have in your life. Credentials help you avoid unemployment because you're maybe more valuable to your employer. If you do leave that job or are forced to leave that job, it helps you find a new job because you have things to offer up to the new employer. And maybe you'll even find a better job because maybe you have some new credentials in the job you're leaving or in other ways you've gotten more credentials. Now, my youngest daughter worked had this happen to her, and she was working at a college. She didn't get work for her major. She got a job. Then she got a second job in an insurance company, and she learned how to be an actuary. That company was very small and was having trouble, and so she decided to leave, and she put in a resume at other places, one of them being an insurance company. The reason she was hired because she's the only applicant who had knowledge in actuaries. That's a credential. I want to have a sidebar here. Before you make any education choices, you need to ask yourself this question. Can I earn a living with the knowledge I will obtain? That's critical. Many young people don't know what they want to do. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do, but they go to college or they go and work on something, learning something, community college, whatever, and they don't know what it'll do for them long term. There are certain majors in college or anywhere that will give you a good job, and there's certain that are really not very easy to make money on. So make sure you study and learn what you can do that'll give you opportunities to make a living. Even after saying that, no learning is a waste of time. You never know when what you learn may be needed. Now, in my personal case, I was a chemical engineer, and one of the things we had to do in my job was to write technical reports, discussing what we had done and what we had found out in any particular problem that I was working on. Well, after I retired, I got involved with a nonprofit, and after I was there for a year or so, the number of people needing our services, it was a food pantry, went dramatically up. This was back in 2008 recession. I realized, thankfully, quickly, that I needed to get more money. And the way you get more money in a nonprofit world is to write a grant. And people who talk about grants with no knowledge of grants, like me at that time, are intimidated. You heard they're difficult and they're hard, and you need to hire somebody to write them for you because you're not going to do it by yourself. Well, we didn't have money to hire anybody, so I said, I got to figure this out. So I went and got involved with writing grants, and it turns out that writing technical reports as a chemical engineer is just like writing a grant. So ever since then, I've been able to get money for the food pantry to keep us going. Another side story here's about my friend Jerry. And my wife, and when she was not retired, she was a wedding cake person. She baked and decorated and delivered wedding cakes to brides and weddings. And I used to be her driver. I would load them in the car, and we'd take them wherever the destination was. And then sometimes when we got there was the bride wanted flowers on the cake, but they were just in a tub. They weren't actually on the cake. So my wife would put them on the cake. Well, a couple of times over the years, my friend Jerry substituted for me when I was sick. So Jerry learned how to put flowers on a cake. Fast forward again in Jerry's life, he was at a wedding, family wedding a number of years later, and they went to the venue, and there was the cake, and there were the flowers not on the cake. And they were all saying, what are we going to do that we have the flowers on the cake? And Jerry said, I'll put them on, because Jerry had been trained in that. So when is the best time to get credentials? My opinion is anytime. It's never too late or too early to own your life. Let me tell you about a boy named Harry. This story includes a couple of supernatural events, and I'll explain them to you later. Now, being a Christian, I'll look at those events as from God, but you may choose whatever you want, but these were not anything that I could explain. So the story begins right before the COVID came, the fall before COVID. Harry and his dad were living with his parents, his grandmother and grandfather, and he had been doing badly in math for quite a while. And Harry had been tutored by two teachers, and they didn't help him. He went to one of those math learning centers. They didn't help him. So his grandmother was desperate to find somebody to maybe help Harry. And she was buying a Christmas tree, and the lady who she bought it from was talking to each other, having a conversation, and she mentioned she was a teacher. And so the grandmother said, do you know anybody that could tutor Harry in algebra? She said, yes, and she gave her my name and phone number. I have no idea how she knew me, never learned that. I wasn't actively tutoring algebra, but I knew I could, and I didn't know. Where did she know? How did this happen? I don't have any idea. To me, that was supernatural. Well, moving forward, I went over to the house and met Harry. I was first thinking he may have had Asperger's or autism because he was very all folded up within himself. He didn't look at you. He whispered when he talked. But moving, that first day, I discovered within a very short period of time what Harry's algebra issue was. He didn't know his times table. Now, I learned a times table in the third grade, and I memorized it, and I still remember it today. But Harry, and maybe even, I did hear that a lot of schools don't require you to memorize a times table. I think that was a foolish idea, but whatever the case, Harry in the 8th grade didn't know his times table. So we got him some flashcards and some other things to practice the times table. And so he continued to practice the times table while I continued to help him with his algebra. And every time I met with him, I would just kind of have a conversation with him about what do you want to do when you finish school and other things like that. It was very clear to me that Harry did not think he had any future. In his mind, he had done so poorly throughout his academic time, from the K to the 8th grade, that he was not going to probably finish high school, maybe, and maybe if he did finish high school, he wouldn't have any good grades. And at that time, this is the second supernatural thing, something was put into my head to tell Harry. And what I told Harry was, and I never had verbalized this, never thought about this ever before, I said, Harry, do you realize that once you enter the 9th grade, all the grades that you had before the 9th grade disappear? All they want to know going forward is what your grades were in 9th grade and 10th grade and so forth. Harry just looked at me in amazement and he said, are you serious? I said, that's true, Harry. So then COVID came along and I didn't tutor Harry anymore, but I did talk to his grandmother periodically. And in 9th grade, he made honor roll. Harry was no longer in this closed-in bodily situation. He looked you in the eye. He talked to you. And I believe that once he got that burden of this 8 years of school off his back, he was able to maximize himself. And this year, this past May, Harry graduated from high school. And not only did he graduate from high school, he graduated from community college with 4 credentials: tungsten arc welding, flux core arc welding, gas metal arc welding, and shielded metal arc welding. He has the certificates, and if he goes anywhere that has welding involved, they would be willing to hire him if they needed somebody because he's been certified in these welding areas. Thinking back over part 2, I want to emphasize the fact that the question from part 1 was, how do you avoid having to use your back? And the answer was education. But education has to be specific and has to be achieved. So that's when you get a credential. So this section emphasizes the need for credential. And I even told a story about Harry, who thought his life was over, and now he's a blossoming young adult. End of part 2. So now I would suggest that you take a break, pause the video, and have a discussion among all those who are in the room. Let's just take a minute to think about what I presented and then resume the video.